Hi everyone, thank you for clicking. We wanted to discuss with you today the lower frequency electromagnetic fields.
Yes.
That would actually contain the extremely low frequency stuff, so from the hertz range up to a couple megahertz.
Yeah.
And how we've gone from skeptics to believers in a way, or Bruce has, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience and transformation in belief.
Right. So we've touched on this on previous videos a few times, but Kayla thought it'd be good to dig in because, as she mentioned, I was very aware of the presence, obviously, of low-frequency electric fields and mag fields. But I never took electric fields in particular. Mag fields I took pretty seriously. I mean, proximity to big high voltage power lines and transformers and things like that. But electric fields I didn't take seriously. And when I did an experiment at Rob's suggestion from Safe Living Technologies to be like, you know what, you want to try and lower those electric fields because they were pretty high. We'll actually show you in this video. Then things changed. But there was some history for that, which we can get into here with a little bit about that, right? So we did a video about RF.
Yes.
It's one of the earlier ones that we did together, right?
It is.
Right? So sort of the same thing for me. I mean, I grew up in this environment as the other video from, that's almost like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, talking about the high RF environments that I was in. Exposed
to in your developmental years.
Yes, exactly.
Important
years. Yeah. But I was also exposed to some pretty high AC magnetic fields. And as I found out not too long ago, now that I'm living back in this house that I actually grew up in, finding out that there was extremely high electric field levels, and we'll show you. But the mag field, so when I was a young person experiencing the same, actually this was before I got into ham radio and all the microwave stuff. As a kid, I tinkered with electronics. Music and electronics were the two things I played with, and I was very passionate about both of them. And so as a boy with electronics, you build things. And I had for many years in my bedroom a little burglar alarm system, and I would have...
Who didn't, by the way? Like what?
Who didn't?
Dennis Jimenez teaches you something.
Yes, I guess. It's a young boy's thing, right? So I had alarm, proximity switches on the door, and then sensors underneath the carpet if somebody's walking. And then because I grew up in a very technical engineering family, my dad didn't mind if I asked if I could put some wires to different rooms of the house and stuff so that I could have, different monitors and things like that. So anyway, without going into details, yes, I had a very weird childhood, but powering all this stuff meant that I needed a power supply to power this security monitoring system.
And it had to go somewhere.
And the power supply had to go somewhere. And I thought, well, a good place as any is to put it out of the way. So I just put the power supply under my bed.
Where you hide everything.
Where you hide stuff. I mean, it was kept, away. And this was a big power supply. It was one that I built on my own using a big old television transformer. And then I would just have a basic... if there are technical people that are watching this video, just a basic bridge rectifier, filter capacitors, and a regulator. And so I built this power supply, but I never understood or knew that the magnetic field, the AC magnetic field that was being kicked off from this power supply is extremely high considering the size of the transformer. And that was sitting for 2.5, 3 years under my bed.
A fair amount of time.
About a foot away, considering the height of the bed from the floor, about a foot away from my abdominal area. And just to give you an example, this is a little AC transformer, 12-volt transformer. It's an old school, what we call as a wall wart or whatever. And it's just a small little transformer. So if I plug this into an AC power source, And then if I take the Gigahertz Solutions NFA 1000, this is a really good 3-axis Gauss meter and E-field meter. And we'll do another video, but 9CI is in the process of making a version of this that is in the similar form to the Safe and Sound Pro, and we're pretty excited about it. But this is a really, really amazing meter. But just so you know, about a foot away, I'm still measuring right now 14, 15 milligauss. Okay, that's already concerning, and this is just a tiny little transformer, and so
These things are heavy too.
yeah, they are very heavy. Yeah, so this is a slightly larger one, but imagine a power transformer that's about 4 times the size of this one. Kayla can put up a still shot of this, right? Imagine that. So the magnetic field, I obviously can't go back in time, but my guess that a foot away, I was being exposed to magnetic fields in the range of 50.
I was going to say 40 to 50.
Yeah, 50 or more a milligauss. And depending on the angle of the transformer and the distance, it could have been higher. But the thing is, so during developmental years, and every night when I went to bed, 8 hours, subjecting myself to that. And it's like, no surprise, there were, health issues later on. So anyway, that was understood. But what happened a few months ago was mind-blowing, because I dismissed low-frequency E fields as a problem, because I was under the impression that, well, who cares what potential you're on? I mean, there's a big movement right now for people to ground themselves and to earth themselves. And that's great, provided you are not in an area or an environment that's got a high electric field, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to ground yourself, and then more current is going to flow through your body.
So like living antenna.
You're exactly living antenna for lower frequencies. And so I was under the impression that, well, it's sort of like, well, I've got nothing connected to me. I'm not grounded. And so there's no current flowing through me. So who cares what potential I'm at? I mean, some could argue, or you would argue, that the Earth is at a certain potential. Well, relative to what? But I was told, wow, you know what? And I knew I was measuring some very high AC electric fields in this house. I mean, I could go right now. This wall down here is better, but again, just going to this wall, I'm getting about 130, 140 volts per meter. Now, again, there's some influence because I'm holding this, but rest assured, without me near this meter, these walls are at 100 volts per meter. There are reasons for that. Could talk about later. Anyway, what never occurred to me, I was told to do this experiment. Hey, kill the power to your sleeping area at nighttime. The night that I did that, I mean, it was just like, I woke up the next morning, it's like, I dreamt, I had dreams, I slept, and it was like literally night and day, and I wouldn't have even believed it. And
it's pretty much the same experiment as turning your router off at night and not having your phone near your bed.
Well, what I actually found was a more profound effect. Like for me, it was such a the electric field effect on my sleep was even more profound than RF. And then it was put to me, it's sort of like, well, of course there's current flowing through you, because when you're measuring the electric field at one point in your bed, and then you move the meter and then you measure it at another point in your bed, well, your body has limbs that are in different areas of the bed.
Fields, yeah.
So of course there's gonna be some current, because there's a potential difference between your foot on your right foot and your left hand, or something like that.
Depending on how you sleep.
Depending on how you sleep, right? Exactly. Some people take up more space than others, and so that's what was happening, and I knew it would be, there could be something to that, but the profound effect that I experienced to this day, it's like I'm dreaming consistently, and dreaming, from what I understand, I'm not an expert on sleep, but my understanding is that dreaming is healthy time. That's when your brain is actually doing repairs, and as you can attest, there's many years of damaged brain that has to be repaired up here. But yeah, what we can do, we can just move to the sleeping area, and I can at least show you some of the electric field readings on the walls. Okay, so in the sleeping area here, I did with the NFA 1000, I did measurements, and as I said earlier, the voltages were between 7 and 10 volts per meter. And that's pretty high considering, you know, the bed isn't super close to the walls. But when I turn the meter on and hold it up to the wall here, yeah, right now I'm seeing about 112 volts per meter, something like that. And again, my hand is influencing it a little bit, but when I actually mount this on an insulated thing and step back, E-field measurements, you have to be away from the meter. It's roughly the same. So the point is, these walls are radiating like crazy, and that has to do with the material that was used in the construction of these walls and the wires that are flowing nearby, and the materials are actually radiating. So these are old school plaster walls, and so there's metal mesh that's behind in there and things like that. So yeah, the solution was to kill the power to 3 different circuits to make this sleeping area electrically quiet. And when the power is killed, the overall readings on the bed itself are around half a volt per meter. And then I start dreaming again. Unbelievable.
So this is just a quick overview of the 2 papers I talked about previously regarding earthing and grounding. There are hundreds of papers that exist considering the effects of ions on the human body. And the premise is that the earth is negatively charged compared to us because we're always being insulated from it. So our shoes, rubberized soled shoes, when we're outside and just being indoors. So how can we fix that? Well, running around outside sounds like a lot of fun, but currently it's winter, so not all of us really want to do that right now. We'll get into solutions for that later on, but there are several beneficial effects to earthing/grounding. Some of which are the anti-inflammatory effects, immune responses, wound healing, and prevention and treatment of chronic inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. This current paper is by James L. Oshman. I will post the information for this below. And so he states that the effects are time dependent. That means that you have to be exposing yourself to ground about, let's say, like a minimum of 15 minutes a day, multiple days in a row, sometimes weeks or months before you'll start to notice effects. There are massive effects on inflammation reduction and a cascade effect for the reduction of other diseases. If there are a bunch of issues that cause the exact same effect and then that lead to a variety of symptoms, you can treat all of those symptoms if you stop it at the midpoint. So he states that we're a living matrix, or ground regulation, or tissue tensegrity matrix system. So the very fabric of our bodies appears to serve as one of the primary antioxidant defense systems. It's a system requiring occasional recharge with contact with the earth. So it's like a battery that requires occasional recharging. So accumulating experiences, anecdotal evidence, and research on earthing or grounding points to the emergence of a simple, natural, and accessible health strategy against chronic inflammation, justifying the serious attention from clinicians and researchers. Earthing, health implications of reconnecting the human body to the Earth's surface electrons by Gaston Chevalier. There are a ton of overlooked health benefits to earthing/grounding. They are interchangeable. I'd like to vote to transition earthing to being the outdoor term and grounding to being the indoor, just so we can differentiate between the two and no longer use them interchangeably as much. Emerging evidence shows that contact with the earth, whether being outside barefoot or indoors connected through a grounded conductive system, natural and yet profoundly effective environmental strategy against chronic stress, ANS dysfunction, inflammation, pain, poor sleep, disturbed HRV, coagulable blood, and many other disorders, including cardiovascular disease, which, as we know in North America, is kind of a really big problem for our healthcare system. In the absence of earth contact, internal charge distribution will not be uniform throughout the body, but instead will be subject to a variety of electrical perturbations in the environment. So being in your kitchen where you're around your fridge, or being at work where you're surrounded by maybe a bunch of servers or something that's really high powered,
going to have a little bit of an offset in your environment. Many important regulations and physiological processes involve events taking place on the cell and the surface of tissues. Absence of a common reference point or ground, electrical gradients due to uneven charge distribution can build up along the tissue surfaces and cell membranes, and such charge differentials will influence the biochemical and physiological processes, since many processes take place on the cell surface. First, many enzymes are really sensitive to local environmental conditions. So each enzyme has an optimal balance point for maximum activity, and changing the electrical environment can alter the pH of biological fluids and the charge distribution of molecules and affect the reaction rates of the enzymes. The pH effect results because of the critically charged amino acids at the active site of the enzyme. The ability of the substrate or enzyme to donate or accept hydrogen ions is influenced by pH. Another example is voltage-gated calcium channels, which we've done videos on in the past. I'll link those below as well, which play a critical biophysical role in cells such as neurons, which are incredibly important to our bodily function as well as the transmission of pain. Local alterations in the charge profiles around these channels can lead to electrical instability of the cell membranes to the inappropriate spontaneous activity observed during certain pathological states, so accidental firing of neurons. Earthing research offers insights into the clinical potential of barefoot contact with the earth or simulated barefoot contact indoors via a simple conductive system, on the stability of internal bioelectrical function and human physiology. Initially, experiments resulted in subjective reports and improved sleep and reduced pain. Subsequent research showed that improved sleep was correlated with the normalization of the cortisol day-night profile. The results are significant in light of extensive research showing that lack of sleep stresses the body and contributes to many detrimental health consequences. So yes, obviously sleep is incredibly important to us. Lack of sleep is often the result of pain. Hence, reduction of pain might be one of the reasons and benefits that we just described. So pain reduction has actually been confirmed from sleeping grounded in a controlled study on DOMS. Earthing is the first intervention known to speed recovery from DOMS. So painful conditions are often the result of chronic or acute inflammation generated by the development of ROS, or reactive oxygen species, developed from normal metabolism, and also by the immune system and as part of the normal response to injury and trauma. So inflammation can cause pain and loss of range of motion in the joint, and inflammatory swelling can put pressure on pain receptors, specifically nociceptors, and compromise circulation, so leading to ischemic pain. Inflammation can cause the release of toxic molecules that also activate pain receptors. Modern biomedical research has also documented a very close relationship between chronic inflammation and almost all chronic diseases, including the diseases of aging and the aging process itself. In fact, the steep rise in inflammatory diseases has been recently called inflammaging, to describe the progressive inflammatory status and loss of stress coping mechanisms that are correlated with the aging process. Reduction of inflammation as a result of grounding has actually been documented using infrared medical imaging. So the explanation for the anti-inflammatory effects of grounding on the body is that it allows negatively charged antioxidant electrons from the earth to enter the body and neutralize the positively charged free radicals at the sites of inflammation. And stress reduction has been confirmed through various measurements showing the shift from the ANS, from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic, and improvements in heart rate variability and normalization of muscle tension as well. Then Chevalier quotes De Flora, stating that since the 20th century, chronic degenerative diseases have overcome the infectious diseases as a major cause of death in the 21st century. So an increase in human longevity will be depending on the finding and intervention that inhibits the development of these diseases and slows their progress. So the next major issue we would like to combat is not necessarily longevity of life, but quality of life.
I am kicking myself because, again, I heard about this stuff and I knew I was taking the magnetic fields fairly seriously, but I was paying so much attention to RF, which you have to, and I was taking the magnetic fields seriously, but I was ignoring the E fields. And
which it's kind of interesting that we would trust that there was problems with like the higher frequency, and then like the, obviously still low frequency, but like higher frequency mag fields, but then you get super low, and we're like, oh, but like research is showing that it doesn't matter what frequency it is. Oftentimes it doesn't even matter what power levels it is. It's just your environment.
Right. Yeah. Maybe you can re-reference that paper that about the incubator in the hospital and the heart rate variability. Right. You've referenced it a few times, but this is a classic example. I mean, an incubator is high in magnetic and electric fields because of all this stuff going. Anyway, if you're a skeptic, and the thing is, we work in this industry. I work with this stuff. I mean, and it
never hurts to be a skeptic, but it doesn't help to close your mind off to stuff.
Exactly.
Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it's not true.
Right. So, again, we're making these videos to illustrate or to show people about the potential harmful effects of all this stuff. And I've been on the other side of the fence. I've been the stubborn person that doesn't believe, that just thinks this is bull. Again, I would not have believed it, but it was like literally, and figuratively flipping a switch. And so to this day, starting from months ago, part of the wind down routine at nighttime is to kill the power to the circuits that affect the electric field in my sleeping area. And there are more user-friendly ways of doing this with remote switches or demand switches and things like that. But right now, I don't mind. Just before I go up at night, I just kill. There's 3 circuits in particular that affect the sleeping area, and it's usually never one, because if wiring runs near your sleeping area, the E field generated from that wiring. So you normally have to kill a few circuits. But again, I'm listening to myself talking, and a year ago, I would have just thought, this guy is nuts. But rest assured, it's not, and it makes a huge difference. And
it doesn't hurt to do an experiment.
Do an experiment. Try it yourself. See what happens. Get a meter and measure the volts per meter. And you want it as low as possible. And some people are able to get, like right now, my sleeping area isn't perfect, but half a volt per meter compared to 10 volts per meter. That's the difference. And it's been a night and day. And I mean, Kayla can attest. I mean, in the last few months, my awareness, my level of concentration, the ability to sleep has increased.
Calmness, like ability to deal with stress outside of.
Right.
If you're already at high level of stress, even if you don't know it. Right. Other external stressors can.
Right. And not that there's anything in the world going on right now that's of any stressing potential, right?
It's been very chill.
The world has been so peaceful and chill, so it's not that. But no, especially now, considering what's going on, holy cow. So I can't imagine the headspace that I'd be in if I didn't have this proper healing time. So
thank you for sticking with us. I hope you enjoyed that and found it informative. And don't be afraid to do some experiments at home yourself.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to check us out on Bitchute and LBRY as well. We're there, and you can subscribe to us there. And leave some comments below. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
And let us know about your experiences as well.
Yeah, if you have questions or comments about it, it's
an open community.
Yeah, exactly.